Hey everybody, so this video is the third in a video essay series I guess I've been doing, just trying to explain what a ShouKenDou black belt is. In one video we talked about the different Dan ranks or levels of that black belt. In another we talked about what exactly a black belt test looks like. And this video is all about the style, ShouKenDou Karate. I'm Brandon Chambers. I founded ShouKenDou Karate and I established Tiger Den Dojo, so this is my story of how I did that. Let's get into it. The founding of ShouKenDou. First thing you need to understand is what it means to create a style of martial arts. This was the first challenge that I came up against. So let's discuss the when, who, and how of people establishing a new style of martial art. The why and when of creating a new style are fused together most of the time. Essentially, both are predicated upon a perceived need that isn't being met by other styles you can find, right? Why was Kung Fu created? So monks could protect themselves from bandits and the. When was it created? When bandits started killing monks and the monks didn't like it. Why are there so many different branches of karate? Because for whatever reason, over and over again, mentor and student had to part ways over differences they perceived to be so critical that they could no longer be considered the same style of karate. The student saw a need that the mentor wasn't fulfilling and so decided to fill it themselves. For the question of who, that's really two questions. First is who can establish their own martial art and who should. As for who can establish their own martial art, the answer is anybody with enough audacity. I find that most people, especially non-martial artists, they're surprised to learn that there's no regulatory body. There's no process you must go through to create your own martial arts style, right? There's no government oversight. There's no group of old men on a mountain you have to go to and get approval from. Nobody you got to show your work to. You today can go outside, you can grab a tree branch, you can swish it around for a minute, give your style a name, and declare yourself a master of it. You can even go buy yourself a black belt. They're $6 on Amazon. There's no punishment for it unless you commit legitimate fraud by making claims that people can prove false, or if you claim affiliation with an actual organization that is not affiliated with you, right? And people will laugh at you and they'll criticize you, but that kind of comes with most martial arts. All of us get mocked and criticized. You'll likely run into trouble if you try and teach and profit from your tree branch fu, but if you have enough charisma to develop a following, and if you steer clear of discerning martial artists who might be willing to publicly challenge, you can possibly get away with it. Now that we know anybody can create a new style of martial art, we come to the question of who should. And this is extremely, tremendously subjective. Most martial artists agree that a new style should only be founded by somebody who has already demonstrated significant competency and commitment in a pre-existing style. And many of them also believe that you shouldn't be creating a new style unless you have some transformative new thing to bring to martial arts. Holding high ranks in other styles, having a fight record, and other accolades are generally desirable. Personally, I don't care what rank the founder earned in another style, so long as the founder is transparent about their experience, right? If you're doing tree branch fu and you admit you made it up after 5 minutes of swishing a tree branch around, that's fine. The only other thing that matters is figuring out if the style actually works, which is another beast entirely, right? For tree branch fu, it may not work, but if you're open and honest about how it came about, then it's a style. There you go. Now we finally get to the question of how is a new style invented? The answer is hugely varied. Most traditional but heavily Americanized martial arts schools in the country choose to have some sort of specific curriculum or syllabus. The styles I grew up with always had a clearly outlined syllabus, which worked nicely for my brain chemistry, right? Other more combat sport focused styles like BJJ, Muay Thai, and MMA focus less on a firm syllabus and curriculum, you need this for this belt, etc., and more on vibes and overall skills level. That's not bad, it's just different. Some styles are created by a single visionary, others are intentionally collaborative efforts. How does ShouKenDou fit into all of this? Well, first you ought to know a bit about the history of the founder, me, Brandon Chambers. I sometimes introduce myself to other karate school owners as a karate hillbilly because I've only ever trained in small, pretty isolated styles. If you look at my lineage, even though it can trace back to people like Gichin Funakoshi and Junri, it isn't exactly a pristine pedigree. I began karate in 2003, training in a small basement dojo. In 2010, at 14 years old, I earned my first degree black belt in karate and taekwondo. As a side note, I often refer to my taekwondo black belt as my Jolly Rancher black belt because it tastes good in the mouth but offers little actual substance. My taekwondo black belt is largely, if not entirely, symbolic. It was given concurrently with my karate black belt because the head of my karate organization was tight with the head honchos of a taekwondo branch, and they agreed to advance anyone in taekwondo if they were in karate shintoshi. The style I first practiced was Shintoshi Karate, founded by Mickey Fisher. I met him in person several times, including at my first degree test before he died in 2013. Mr. Fisher had a lot of interesting claims as a martial artist. I didn't realize how wild, if true, a lot of them were until later in life. He claimed to be the original Karate Kid, the first American teenage black belt, things like that. Maybe I'll do a video of me trying to cobble together that history sometimes. It's a pretty fascinating little rabbit hole, at least to me. After Mickey Fisher died, my former sensei, a woman named Caroline, didn't get along well with the new Shintoshi leadership. I'm a bit fuzzy on exact dates, but I believe she formally broke ties with Shintoshi in early 2016, establishing her own style of Tanren-do karate. I had departed the dojo during this transition, leaving in the busy senior year of 2013 and returning in 2017. I had to learn all the changes and prove consistent attendance again before being promoted to second Dan in Tanren-do karate in June of 2019. By only 5 years after establishing the style of Tanren-do karate, Caroline came to me and privately revealed she was going to be stepping aside and invited me to begin preparing to take over the style within the next few years. I initially accepted the invitation, really excited, but over the course of the next couple of years, I realized that I was deeply unhappy with the way I was being treated, especially when compared to the level of commitment and voluntary hours I'd given to the dojo. In November 2022, I finally told Caroline that something had to change or I couldn't continue with her. It was affecting my mental health far too much. She agreed and told me to take a hike. So I did. And that's me summarizing a lot of stuff. My mental health was terrible. A trusted mentor of 20 years had just sent the message, "I'd rather my style wither and die without an heir than apologize to you for the mistreatment you've undergone." I knew I couldn't abandon karate, teaching it in my bones. I love it, but I also knew that my trust was too broken to simply join another affiliation. The who for creating ShouKenDou was therefore a broken little karate boy, desperate to prove to himself that he was worth something, some kind of dignity. The need, the why behind ShouKenDou was my need. I needed to prove to myself that I didn't deserve the treatment that I had received. As for the how, I knew I didn't want to do this alone. It's my belief that collaboration done right always leads to the best results. I recruited Mike Andelin, Noah Andelin, and Henry Spackman to act as my collaborating team. I started our first meeting on February 25th, 2023, by telling them the core principles of ShouKenDou Karate: honor, respect, gratitude, and pride. All of the virtues I wish I had been treated with. Together we created a new syllabus, adjusting, subtracting, and sometimes replacing from what we previously learned. Shintoshi, for instance, had no age requirement for black belts, which I did not like. Tanren-do required an age of 12. We bumped that up to 14. We removed a lot of what we perceived to be filler content in the main curriculum. We discussed over the course of many meetings and group chats how to raise and maintain standards where previously we had seen them grow lax. Then we formally ratified the style and signed the founding document as the 4 founders in March of 2024. Though the syllabus and curriculum have been modified and improved since then, especially with the help of Mikkel Allred, who I refer to as the 5th founder. And to be clear, we didn't reinvent the wheel to create ShouKenDou Karate. We took what we had learned, and we kept the good and got rid of the filler. We significantly raised the expectations for the Dan ranks, that means black belt ranks, and now we expect our Dan ranks to learn some level of grappling and takedown defense. We treat the GUP ranks, being everything before black belt, as a video game tutorial, and the Dan ranks as exploring the open world of martial arts. Most of the founders are Zelda fans, and I would often compare the Gup ranks to the Great Plateau in the Breath of the Wild. Of the 3 videos in this series, this was the hardest one to script, largely because of how critical the online martial arts community can be and my own imposter syndrome. And usually, the ones who train the least are the ones most vocally critical online. But there's still a part of me that's anxious and thinking like Jesse Camp or Sensei Seth or McDojo Life, all of whom are YouTubers I really look up to, are going to do a critique video of this. And they're awesome. And that's the risk I have to take if I want to be open about how this style was creative. And I think that's worthwhile. I think if any of you are considering branching off to your own school, this might help. Be open about the history of the style, because I think in the age of information, people expect transparency. It's the reason I have transparent prices on my website. I've come to believe that there are 3 choices people can make generally when they've been wronged. Choice number 1 is to go out and hurt others the way that you were hurt in a twisted and warped attempt to make the world fair. Option 2 is to curl up in a ball and hide and refuse to confront it and hope you never get hurt again. And option number 3 is recognize what happened to you and do everything in your power to make sure that it doesn't happen to anybody else around you. And ShouKenDou is my attempt to be that 3rd person. Thanks, guys. I'll be testing for my 3rd degree here in just like a week and a half. I'm really excited. I'm really nervous. As the founder, it's very bizarre, but there's a precedent for like my fellow founders will promote me if I deserve to be promoted, right? That's an interesting precedent, and I should probably do a video on that too. Maybe I will. Thanks, guys. Bye.